Hello everyone, welcome to the Tools I Use podcast. It is Francesco here. Today I'm very lucky to be joined by Erik Fisher, who is the productivity podcaster behind Beyond the To-Do List. Erik, it is so good to have you and so great to finally at least virtually meet you.
Yeah. Great to, I've been aware of you for a little bit and, maybe a year. I don't know. I don't try to, it gets blurry when you're figuring out when you see people talking to other people online, but ultimately I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited, and maybe fill in some of the gaps because that's not all you do. You keep yourself fairly busy.
I've got a lot to do. I just recently, as of November, started working at a new role at Agora Pulse. That's a Paris-based social media productivity tool, and that I really believe in, and I've used for a long time. And it's where you can connect all your social inboxes, as well as it's a scheduling tool, it's a reporting tool. It's an all-in-one tool that, and so I used to work in social media on the front end of things. I'm now on the back end of things. So it's nice to work for a tool that, again, allows you to publish and report and listen and engage all from one dashboard without having to jump from social media app to app to app. So that, and, obviously producing a podcast.
That's it. On that, I guess it's pretty stressful. People find managing social media almost like a chore these days.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. And that's where I was for a while. For 5 years, I worked for Social Media Examiner as a social media manager and a community manager. Prior to that, I was doing it for 3 years at a university. So 8 straight years of working in social media out in public. Kind of burnt out a little bit, and it's not that it's a bad thing. It's just you kind of I got to the point where I was using social media less for myself and not gaining any of the, I will be the first to admit I was not the best social media marketer of my own show. So I wanted to start doing that some more.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Well, it's a fantastic podcast. If you haven't listened, we'll include it in the show notes. It's fantastic. Touching on the sort of first question, how do you sort of go about structuring a typical day for you? How does that begin? I guess it depends if you have a typical day.
Mm-hmm. So a typical day for me, an ideal day even, hopefully, is I always want to make sure I've gotten enough sleep. So if something's happened, I try to allow myself to have a buffer and sleep till a certain point. I will get up earlier than the rest of my family, without any doubt. However, I like to have, that buffer of I'm up and I'm doing stuff. I'm either reading or potentially, sometimes that's when I go downstairs and to the basement living room area and I'll watch a show. Just to kind of wake up while I have a cup of coffee. And most people are like, how productive is that to watch TV first thing in the morning? I'm like, it's perfectly productive because then I'm not staying up late. And then, I get to watch whatever I want. Nobody else is around. So what do you mean you're not knocking out all those emails first thing in the morning? No, actually, I do often do that. Sometimes I will actually have a tablet open, sit on the couch, have a show going that's not something I have to pay super much attention to. And I'll go through emails and I'll say, oh, delete, or archive, or, get rid of stuff. And not necessarily the answering of things, but the removal of the bulk of stuff, so partially processing.
Neat. I've not heard of a concept like that. That's quite cool.
It's
very passive.
It is. And what it does is it makes it so that when So then here's how it goes. Later, when I've gone out and ideally I've gone and worked out, then I'm back home. The family's up. They're getting ready for school. And I have a window there before when my wife and my son leave and my daughter doesn't need to go to high school yet, but I'm the guy who drives carpool.
Yeah.
So we pick, she and I pick up another friend and so on. Until we leave the house, I have a window there. And that's when I'll sit down and I'll actually say, okay, let me answer some of these emails. Let me get those out of the way. That's a 7:30 to 8:15 type window, 45 minutes. And I have and because of that window, I'm moving at a faster pace because I'm like, I only have so much. I have an Alexa timer going off to let me know, hey, you need to leave in about 5 minutes. Oh, okay, great. Wrap this up, be done.
Yeah.
I take her, and then often I will either stop at the coffee shop that's near the high school and sit and get some coffee, write ideas down and brainstorm, or depending upon if I have meetings earlier, that's when I'll be back for those. If I decide not to do coffee, I'll come back and maybe, again, depending upon if I have recordings booked, depends on what day it is, come back and do some research or pushing, projects forward. Then I get to about lunch, and I'll typically take at least a half hour or so. And what I'll try to do is sit and eat without looking at a screen, so that I'm not looking at them all day. So there's that. And then in the afternoon, I know I start to get more tired, so I'll allow myself to have a caffeine boost of some sort, typically with some tea or something. Try to taper off as we get into, 2-3 o'clock. I don't want to have more beyond that point. And then I'm winding projects down. It really depends. And then I'll do kind of a closeout of the day at about 4:30 my time. I will go into the email inbox one more time, just make sure there's nothing there. Go into Slack to see if there's anything work related that needs to be done, reply wise, and then I will shut everything down. Depending upon there's kind of a buffer there of depending upon what the family's schedule looks like that night. Where like today, I do need to, when we're done talking, I'm actually going to close some stuff down. And then my son and I are the only ones around. So we're going to I asked him what he wanted for dinner. He picked something. We're going to go do that real quick, and that'll be fun. And then when we come back, I've got like a 15-20 minute thing I need to finish. So it's all about being flexible, to be honest.
Yeah, that seems like the key recipe or ingredient to the recipe that you got there is like flexibility around like other work life. So yeah, that's really cool. I like that. And what are the sort of like tools that you use to help manage that? I guess calendar, notes, and tasks is a very general structure.
Yeah. We primarily I am using Google Calendar for the back end of things, but I always like to look at something that's pretty, or at least the user interface works well. And so I'm using BusyCal on both my mobile or tablet device settings, and I use it on the desktop as well. I just like the way it looks, to be honest. I looked at all the different ones, and that's the one I landed on. As far as writing notes or digital scratch pad, I use Drafts. That's a Mac and a iOS app as well. And then, I'll if I'm working on something or I'm sending it over to somebody, it gets copied or actually sent out from there into Google Docs for working collaboration purposes. And then as far as, my task manager of choice, since about, I think for almost 3 years now, it's been Things 3. And it's just because they sold me. Like I tried they had a free trial for their desktop app for the Mac, and it just felt good using it, use the user interface wise, and I thought this is what I'm going to use, and so I purchased it for all my devices, and I haven't looked back. I haven't had to pay for an upgrade in 3 years almost now, and I gladly would, and I've gotten really good at it. It's fairly easy to use, so yeah.
So like a forever application if you just don't want to ever change. That's good.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't think they may come out with paid updates at some point just to upgrade to like a 3.5 or something, or if they just skip over to 4, I'm sold. Like it works great. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, interesting. And like one thing you talk a lot about on the podcast is sort of going literally the title of the podcast beyond the to-do list, and talking about those sort of concepts. Like for you, like recommending tools, how important do you think the tool plays into the general productivity system? Because like it'd be great to hear your sort of take on it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, again, I have gotten a lot of those questions where it's, hey, what's the best insert blank here tool, whether it's a calendar or email, task management, all of that, the best notebook. And honestly, it comes down to, I just say whichever one you're going to keep using. So, there's not a lot. I mean, I'm oversimplifying for sure, but there's not a huge difference feature set wise between a lot of these. It's moreover how it's set up inside of the app, how quickly you can get to it, where you find it, the user interface. And so that's again why I chose Things 3. Now I know there's more that like an OmniFocus is doing. Like it can do a lot more, but none of that is as simple as I care to have things, be in terms of task management. Like I could do overkill, I could do tags, and I know I can do tags in Things 3 also, but so that's not a great example. But I just know that I could go through and create a bunch of different options. But I will say this: I have a friend, Jeff, who he uses Todoist, and Todoist is great. I used it for a while, had no problem with it, but I think he's paying for it, and I think over the course of the past almost 3 years now, I've now paid less because I paid one time. So cost is a factor, user interface is a factor. Those are the real things that when it comes down to it is testing out which ones you like, and just seeing, are you going to actually use it or not? So,
yeah, that's good advice. It's like long-term approach as much as you can. Yeah, and I like that. Like with Things 3, you can just pay one off. Like that's rare in a lot of subscription applications these days. At least, like I'm sure they'll cotton on soon, but hopefully not.
Yeah.
And like, were you inspired by any like underlying productivity principles like GTD, or do you have any methodologies like Pomodoro method, anything like that?
Well, yeah, for sure. So I would say that getting things done still, for the most part, I mean, even though I don't remember when it was, I talked to David Allen in the, I think, somewhere in the back half of last year for my show again. They came out with or maybe, you know what, I think it was like late summer. But anyways, David Allen was on my show, and I said, okay, I want to make this as simple as possible for anybody to getting things done, to understand it. And it's so simple. It doesn't, for the first time, I felt like it's the least complicated it ever had to be. I think we overcomplicate things when we look through it. And they had the Getting Things Done workbook was what had just come out. And I highly suggest everybody go through it, because it distills it down, strips off all the like extra, like, well, what about this? Well, what about this? No, we already covered that. It's this. We already covered it. It's capped. I mean, in basic, I will not rattle it off in its entirety, but capturing what you have to do, thinking about what it is you have to do, which you have to make time to think. And I think that's the biggest missing piece, or the biggest thing that people just are, they bump up against is, what do you mean I have to think about what it is I have to do? I just want to throw stuff in there and then just do it. Well, we know that's not how that works. We know that, if I want to, I mean, it's not about just getting stuff. It is about getting stuff done, but it's about choosing what to get done and then getting it done, not just receiving from somebody else. I mean, think about that. Actually, it's a great point. Let me take 30 seconds to riff on this. So you are handed a task from somebody at work. Doesn't matter who it is. If it's a boss, coworker, whatever. You may or may not know how to do it, but if it's a brand new thing, even if it's not a brand new thing, actually, especially if it's not a brand new thing, it's something you've done before, but they have an expectation of how they want it done. You may have an idea of how it is you want it done, but if you just go do it and then come back to them, if you did not take a couple extra minutes to ask them a couple questions to confirm what it is they wanted, you see what I'm saying? That the talking about what it is that needs to get done, it's the agreement on the expectation, it's agreement, and that's what you need to do by yourself, with yourself. When I referenced earlier the whole going to the coffee shop and sitting down and with a pad and a paper, it's like, I will do a weekly review that way. I will go through and say, I better look at my calendar, I better look at my task list, I better look at my email and just make sure that I've got everything collected and then I know I'm looking at my different horizons. So that's why GTD has always been important to me. And then when you get down into the nuts and bolts of, I know that I need to sit and write up an explanation or go through processing these emails. That's when a Pomodoro technique falls into place. That's when putting on headphones and listening to my choice of, Brain FM, where it gets me focused. That's where that comes into play. But if you don't have that map of, you can't look for shortcuts or faster or more efficient ways to do things if you don't know what the things are you're supposed to be doing.
That's it. That's a really good
that's
point,
where getting things done. Again, that's where people bump up against getting things done, is they want to get things done fast, when in fact getting things done is really a methodology of organizing what it is you have to do and then ordering it so that you can get it done.
Yeah.
So
that's good. I think you hammered home on the point. It's like being a lot more intentional about your decisions or choices of what you do first, and then actually executing on it. I'm reading I'm doing a course at the moment, Sean Blanc's focus course.
Yes.
And that one's like really good for like being like, right, what do you actually want to do before you go and actually bloody do it?
Sean's stuff is great, and that course looks amazing. And I would say everybody go get it. The only reason I didn't was because I knew I couldn't fit it in time wise right now. I've got too much going on, and that's okay. But I know it'll come back around, and I'll do it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I almost have to make sure I do it every day, because it's like a 40-day one, but it'll pay off.
It will, for sure.
And my final question for you, Erik, is around your inspiration for doing this. Like, why do you do the podcast? What inspires you to help people like you have been?
Yeah, so if I can be completely honest, I started off with I want to learn from other people how they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so, it was all about self-interest to begin with, but I knew other people would care to listen. So I thought, well, why don't you come along on the journey with me as I go through this? I keep it up, and I do it now because of the people that have reached out and said, thank you so much for doing the show. This episode, I really learned this, those kinds of things. So hearing back from the community and the help that it's done for them. And again, I'm still learning, and new ideas come up, and think about it. A couple years ago, nobody knew about, nobody was talking about, nobody was thinking about, and Cal Newport hadn't come out yet with Deep Work. Then it came out, and and then Indistractable with Near IL recently, and James Clear with Atomic Habits. Like, new stuff is always coming out, new research. So it's exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm yet to read that Indistractable one. It's over on that bookshelf. But it looks good. Yeah. Did you enjoy it?
I did. Yes. Yeah. That is. Yeah. If people are looking for new productivity books, or just what's the next productivity book they need to read, that's one of the 2 or 3 that I would suggest.
Lovely. Brilliant. Well, Erik, where can people find you after this podcast?
Yeah. Come on over and listen and subscribe to mine if you haven't. You can find it easily at beyondthetodolist.com.
Brilliant. Lovely, jubbly. Well, thanks for coming on, and I'm sure this won't be the last one of our chats, but thank you. And
yeah, for sure.
I hope you have a good poker evening.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Yeah, it'll be good fun. All right. Thanks, Erik.
You're welcome.